Frat, these some of the best people in the world.
Therefore it says, wake up, sleeper. Get up from the dead. Christ will shine on you. So be careful to live your life wisely, not foolishly. Take advantage of every opportunity because these are evil times. Because of this, don't be ignorant, but understand the Lord's will. Saints of God, my eyes have seen the glory and the coming of the Lord. He's trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He hath loosed the faithful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. I see him in the watchfires of 100 circling camps. They have builded him an altar in the evening dew and damps. I can read his righteous sentence by the dim and flaring lamps. His day is marching on.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brandon A.A. Content Writing Service and the host of Conversation with Faith Leaders. I'm excited to be live with you today. We've been on a little hiatus, but we're back and we have some wonderful people to help us to talk about surviving church hurt. Today, I have with me a good friend of mine, my frat brother, Pastor Greg Merriweather. I also have my sister, you've seen her before, Tina DeVoe, and I have my new conscience of my mind, the almost Reverend Dr. Low Woodford. So we're going to have a good conversation today. So I hope everyone is excited. Tina, Greg, Amber, welcome to the show. And let's talk about surviving church hurt. And before I ask my first question, have you been a victim of church hurt?
I have not.
That's the first. Amber, have you ever been a victim of church hurt? That's my first.
I don't think so. I've seen it, but I don't think I've personally been victimized. Well, maybe. How did I think about it?
Pastor Greg, what about you? Pastor Greg, have you been a victim of church hurt before?
I probably didn't know what to call it at the time, but certainly I probably can say yes. And for me, it was, I'll say, people who, in this age of serving, people who take advantage of your gifts or take advantage of loyalty. And when it comes to, I'll say your best interest, you learn that truly they are not looking out for your best interest. And so I've had experiences with that over time and had to learn how to get through, deal with, and move on beyond that.
Gotcha.
Can I say, Dr. Davis, that I think as a pastor, I may have experienced some level of hurt when I was senior pastoring by people in my congregation. Like I said, now that I think about it, I tried to push that out of my mind.
And you know what? And I think that is for at least for two of us who are senior pastors who have served as senior pastors, I think that is the case. That the church hurt is different from what it would be from, in Tina's case, a lay perspective. I think most persons will identify that they've had some feelings that were uncomfortable coming from church people, and they may not very well, as Greg said, be able to identify it as church hurt. And then there's also the aspect of what I'm hoping the response is going to be from Tina is that some of the things that we might want to call church hurt may not be church hurt at all. It might be something else. So to go ahead and have this conversation, go ahead, Tina.
No, I was going to say, I think just in you asking the blank question, the answer to that question is based on everybody's definition of church hurt or your belief in church hurt. personally, having grown up in the church, worked with several large organizations and large pastors. I've led large ministerial staffs, organized lots of events dealing with volunteers. I've been the person on the phone who answers when your husband died and we need to dispatch, ministry to come ministry. So I think I've worked in every area of the church. And I think for me, it's often the setup, almost like you set yourself up. Because if we think about the church as it's relative to other organizations or other institutions, the church is the only place that doesn't have a process of leadership, right? So if you show up regularly, you can run the usher board. If you come consistently, you could be over security. We're going to pick the trustees and let them count the money. No background checks are done. So I guess me and my practical way of thinking, I don't have expectations of people who haven't been vetted. So if they do something that's out of the box or crazy, it's like, oh, I can believe that happened because they were allowed to run amok with no process. But I'm personally not hurt by you, though I've been talked about, accused on many occasions. It's just that my even those that I'm serving, I wasn't serving you for you. I was serving you because I felt like that's what God was calling me to do. So regardless of what you were doing to me or thought about me, it never distracted me from getting the job done because my identity has never been wrapped up in any church.
Gotcha. So this is a good segue for us to jump into our first question. And the first question is simply to define it. Define church hurt and what does it look like in today's culture? And so Tina, you was already there. So why don't you go ahead and help us to define what church hurt is, what it might be, and how does it look in today's culture?
For me, and the way it looks, the way I hear it talked about or referred to, it's someone who has allowed themselves to live in a false security with people who are not required to be committed or loyal to them. So I always feel like church hurt can be sometimes self-inflicted. You stayed too long, you knew it wasn't good. You trusted people you shouldn't have trusted, or you didn't get out of it what you wanted to get out of it. And then now all of a sudden you're mad and it's church hurt. It's like, no, it's just like a bad business deal. I've had bad business deals and I didn't say NASCAR hurt me. I didn't say Coca-Cola hurt me. I didn't say Puma hurt me. I was like, this deal didn't go good. And mind you, I'm calling those just because they're people I've worked with. Nothing's happened there. But I didn't attach it to a whole organization. I just think it's separate. It's just a life experience. So someone hurting you in church is no different than someone hurting you at the grocery store, somebody hurting you at the bank, unless you have allowed them a space in your life that they had not yet earned. That would be my definition.
Amber, define church hurt and what does it look like in today's culture?
Yeah, I want to respond very briefly first to one thing that was just stated. I think that for me, I think that church hurt is different than being hurt in other arenas because people will use God talk and God language in the Bible and Jesus and their authority to justify their hurt, right? And that happens, in other sectors, right? We have a whole country, in other countries that have positioned themselves as an arm and mouthpiece for God, right? And I think what makes church hurt dangerous is that people can really believe that their authority is of God, and therefore my actions are ordained by God. So I want to say that, but I think that I see church hurt as not attending to people's tangible, real, material needs, right? You can preach and teach about, eternal life all day long. You can talk about otherworldliness and salvation, right, all day. But unless you tie salvation and what that means to my real lived experiences, and you neglect that, right? You neglect me as a person, my personhood, and my community, and my context. I would define that as church hurt. And I will also define it, like I say, as an abuse of power. Many church leaders, bishops, pastors, others in the church, right, use their authority to abuse people sexually, theologically, right, physically. And so I'm thankful that we are in an era right now where people are not afraid or less afraid to speak up against abuse of authority, especially in churches. Because again, what makes it dangerous is people using their power and insulating themselves and God talk. And that can be very dangerous.
Amber, I'm glad that you said exactly what you just said, because that is some of the things that first came across my mind when I thought about the conversation. And let me just say, as a caveat, I have not been hurt by church hurt in the terms that most persons outside of ministry would call it. I think there's a definition from each perspective. But I do realize that there are some things that happen within the realm of the church that happens and people have a definition for it. And so therefore, the generalized name for it has been church hurt. Pastor Greg Merriweather, you are a senior pastor. You are a community activist. You got your hands in several different things. And so you see it from different perspectives. What is church hurt and what does it look like in today's culture?
It's just, I think as both my colleagues just stated, it's really a challenging question because there's so many perspectives. You know, I love Amber used the word authority, and that's major. So I'm going to stick a pin in there for a moment. But I would say church hurt really, it can take place from anybody in the church. It takes place, and it hurts because your guard is down. You know, so church hurt can't really take place, I don't feel, in a space in which trust is not the expectation, and it's when that trust is broken, and that can be from someone who's in authority. That could be from someone who you labor or co-labor with, and so it's a break of trust. It's a breach of trust. It is not just proactive, right? So it's not just something being done to you, but it could also be interpreted as something that you did not do when it was brought to you. So, for example, if you are in a position of leadership and you have someone come and share with you that someone else in your leadership, within the order of your leadership, abused their power and or violated their power and abused someone in the congregation, you have a responsibility to do something about it. As I call it, it's a chain of custody when it comes to whatever the occurrence is. It's always going to be, when did you hear it? What did you do? How quickly did you address? Even if it's just looking into something. So I've seen church hurt also from the other side, whereas people say, well, listen, these things were taking place in the church and I brought it to you and you did nothing. So again, yes, I can talk about it from a variety of different perspectives, but I think church hurt can be defined as a breach of trust when trust has already been established and that person's guard was down. So you're not going to have a person from, let's say, person new off the street that's coming into the church that is going to experience church hurt for the most part, because that person still has their guard up. But a person that's been there for a while and the trust has been established, and it's something that has been broken outside of their best interest, that no matter what we call it, that's hurtful.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that what you said about letting your guard down, right? So I always find it interesting that people let their guards down so quickly and so freely.
Yeah.
You go to a few church services, you've been to a couple revivals, and now this your sister, this your brother, this is auntie, and it's like, we all have been there. We know it sounds good and it feels good, but if you really step back and ask yourself, why do I trust these people? This is a institution that's set up for broken people to come get healed, for healed people to become better. Like it's an atmosphere where broken people are being fixed, right? So you can't step into a room full of broken glass and be surprised you got cut, because there's a possibility that this could happen. So the letting your guard down thing is always interesting to me, because I find that people let their guard down because there's this emotional roller coaster that they just haven't even investigated to figure out why am I okay with being vulnerable in this space. The other side of me is, Brandon knows I always say I work on the business side of church. Most churches don't have a human resources department, or a protocol. Because if I were on my job and I felt sexually assaulted, I can go to the head of human resources, and there is a checklist of things that happen to investigate and deal with the situation. For some reason in the church, we still have not holistically developed a business side to church. And that means taking care of the people who are there. So for me, I feel like the leadership or pastors are irresponsible if you have these people in this building with no procedures. Like, that's just a disaster waiting to happen. You're not protecting your investment, but you're also not protecting your people, because people shouldn't feel free to roam the church, because my personal opinion is that I feel like people feel free to roam the church because they know there aren't any protocols. Not that this is not happening everywhere else. I mean, you have children who are being molested in the Catholic Church, the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club. Like, it's a wide issue, but I'm always a little disappointed when we have church hurt and it is almost set up as though it's a different kind of hurt. It really is just manipulation, power, or the individual's responsibility has to have part of the responsibility of saying, why did I sit here vulnerable? For what? What did these people offer me or say to me that convinced me to be this transparent and this vulnerable? Because Jesus is your reason. These are just people that we're fellowshipping with and having a good time. So salvation is granted, right? But a lot of times when you find individuals, I'm always nervous when people, the church is their whole life. Their whole life. It terrifies me. I'm like, oh my God, you're going to get trapped in this bubble. And you're not even going to be able to recognize problems because you don't spend enough time outside of this environment to be able to see other situations that could help you broaden your eyes in your current situation.
So Tina, that's something
I want to jump on that just a quick second.
Go ahead.
I think that, and I've learned to be kinder when it comes to this. I think some people just don't know, and I think we often duplicate what we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not that every church can, put a full human resource department in place,
right.
But there are not enough voices that lend support from an advisory perspective. And here's the thing, two things I'll just say. Number one, we talk about people who sit in those situations for so long, and I think we preach a delayed hope, if you would.
Yeah.
And and oftentimes people are waiting for it to get better after a while. But at the same time, I think you mentioned the bubble. I think when you are so insular and you don't have enough voices that are saying, listen, this is not okay. And it's heartbreaking to hear of stories. This is real life stuff. To hear of stories of abuse and I'm aware of stories of abuse, and it was brought to the pastor, and let's say the remedy that was put in place was not in the best interest of the victim.
The victim, right?
It is horrifying to not hear that there weren't voices around that even a pastor could listen to say, listen, this isn't okay. This presents not only ethically, but from a Christological perspective, but also puts us at a high degree of liability. Number one. Number two, there are, as pastors and leaders, we have to learn how to lead by our strengths and recruit to our weaknesses or our blind spots. Mm-hmm. And so we have to learn our limitations. Mm-hmm. and understand that even if I can't hire someone, then I could at least bring and reach out and consult to bring people in and take a look at some of the practices and the things that we're doing, whether it's musically, from a technology perspective, from a staffing, HR, or whatever. So we have to learn how to do that as well. You being called to preach and pastor does not make you the resident expert in everything. And unfortunately, that is the thought that many of our churches use.
Yeah, that number one thing.
Well said.
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say that's well said, Greg, because from a system of denominational rules, Amber, you're CME, Christian Methodist Episcopal. Tina and I are AME. Where Tina grew up. Tina has a relationship with AME Church. How about that? I'm an AME ordained preacher. And so I recognize that there is, what you say, Tina?
I said that was a good way to put it.
Yeah, Tina has a relationship with AME Church.
I don't love God the way you put that. You couldn't even categorize my faith. You know me this long? This is a mess.
Well, listen, I wanted to say AME, but then I also know that you are a member of a non-denominational church, so I wanted to give respect to that. But Tina is a former first lady. Her husband was a pastor in AME Church, well-beloved man who died way too young a long time ago. And Tina's relationship with the AME Church extends beyond that of her family, her namesake. Her work in AME Church is stellar. But I wanted to recognize the fact that she is a member of a non-denominational church. But part of a denominational rule organization that has systems in place, the danger of church hurt is that, and I think, Amber, you said this, and I want to get your response to question number 2. We have these rules in place, but yet we don't follow them all the time. We have known sexual harassment in the church. We've known abuse in the church, and yet it has gone reported, in some cases unreported, and still nothing was done. And Greg, you just said it, we don't have a system of security for those who have been hurt. I think we foster an environment of church hurt simply because, as Tina said, the church has not taken seriously the need to put an infrastructure of business rules in place to help us govern the work that we do. When you start exchanging money and time, you are exchanging modicums of reality that translate into business. Mm-hmm. And we need these systems and structures in place, because what happens is lawsuits come to pass, and that's business. Somebody got to pay that money. Situations come to pass, and that's business. Somebody got to handle that. Somebody's going to jail if the case is federal, and fraudulent enough. Something is going to happen. And so we have to deal with that. And so I want to get Amber's response to question number 2, which is, how do you model Christian maturity and practice when correction is viewed as church hurt? We have we have these people who say, oh, I've been hurt and abused by the church, but the reality is it wasn't church hurt. You were just being corrected. You was being told what is proper procedure. And let's just say it's coming from a pastor who has a mind that says, this is church, spiritual, hallelujah, thank you, Jesus. But then you just can't take the money because your mama founded this church and put it where you want to put it. You just can't do X, Y, and Z because you've been here 50 years.
Why not? Why not? Why can't they?
Amber, how do you model Christian maturity and practice when correction is viewed as church hurt?
Yeah, I mean, that requires some restraint. You know, I mean, I pastored a church, won't say which one, but I pastored a church, right? Where, like many churches, as you say, Brandon, the membership felt that because they had been there for a long time and that the family, you know, or families were you know, instrumental in the building and sustainment of the church in the past, that anyone who came in who said, okay, let's not rest on our past laurels. Let us see how we can be relevant today. Let us, you know, kind of revise our language that we use to talk about God and to talk about whatever, right? Theologically. That's not, like you said, that's not church hurt. That is me using my authority to bring us into a better space, right? That is me using, you know, my ordination to do what I was sent here to do. You know, and that is not to cower to people who feel like, you know, they don't have to, you don't have to agree, you know, but that doesn't mean that, you know, you totally dismiss what someone is saying and then use that to play victim. I mean, I've experienced that for sure. So yeah, it takes some restraint. I mean, you have to pick and choose. I'm speaking from a pastoral lens, right? Now as a layperson, you have to pick and choose your battles, right? I mean, if I had spent time entangling myself in all the, you know, arguments and all the, you know, back and forth, right, with people about what I could and could not do, you know, I would have never got anything done at all. So yes, people do take correction as, you know, hurt when, and people take correction as hurt even more when it's coming from someone who is younger, right? And when it's coming from someone who has not traditionally, when it's coming from someone who has not traditionally filled the role as pastor, right? In every church that I pastored, I was always the youngest pastor and the first woman pastor, right? And so me, you know, coming in and sharing my gifts and, you know, trying to work together with congregations, not always, right, but sometimes people would act as though when I would correct, right, I have a thing, y'all, about hymns and song and gospel songs with bad theology in them. You know, it irks my soul when I hear songs, right?
I'm with you.
With the theology, the Christology, right? Not only is bad, but it also doesn't align with, you know, Methodist thought, right? I'm Methodist, so I mean, we don't have a real high Christology, right? So I mean, when I hear stuff, you know, like one song, what is it? It's so bad I can't think of it right now. But basically, the song the lyrics strip the person of his or her or their agency and place all the onus on Jesus to make every decision. I know the song is who will make all my decisions for me, and Jesus will. Jesus will, that song, right? I hate that song. I hate that song. I mean, because first of all, Jesus ain't said none of that. He ain't said none of that. Number
Jesus
one.
will.
Yeah, he ain't said he was gonna do none of that. And you all are combining Old and New Testament stuff, and you also stripping people of their agency, right, to make their own decisions and to consult God in the process of making decisions, right? So I would, you know, raise questions, you know, about what these songs would, you know, mean and the biblical foundation for these songs, and, you know, are they sound theologically right? And people would get upset. Like, you can't be, you can't. Yes, I can. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to help the community, because espousing bad theology is not only hurtful for you, but it's also hurtful for the community, right? So I say all that to say, when people don't respect a lot of times the voice, right, and the body that the correction comes from, and then they take that, as hurtful and disrespectful.
And so I'm glad you said it, Amber, because Tina and I, we've had this conversation, and I'm glad Tina is actually here for this conversation, because she brings that business side. So only in the church, Greg, only in the church can a person get offended and quit the job. I don't want to be a member here no more. I ain't giving you no more money. I'm not doing nothing else because the pastor, the steward, the deacon, somebody done hurt my feelings. But on the job, Tina, boss can correct you, and let me just say it however he or she wants to say it, and you gonna comply. So what is it with? So why does persons feel that it's okay for me to get upset, quit, and walk away in the house of God, but then you gonna stick it out on your job?
Okay, now you're gonna hear me say this 1,000 more times. There is a business side to church. I don't know. I've been saying it for years and years and years, and people automatically assume that, oh, we don't have the budget for this. This isn't about a budget. This is about a controlled environment. This is about being intentional. This is about making sure that the church grows and we all stay on the same page. And everybody's not required to stay with you for a lifetime. It's okay for somebody to come and be a member of your church for 3 years and then grow up and go do something else. Like that's okay. They don't have to stay with you forever. That's one of the things that I'm enjoying about COVID, is that y'all have all lost your members. They were never yours. They belong to God all the time. Like they never really belonged to you. And so I'm appreciating that shaking up. But to get back to your question, I think that the number one reason why people don't do it at work is because the job has established what's going to be tolerated and what's not. Literally, you're not about to come in here.
Yes,
you're not storming in here because you got a problem. No, you're going to schedule an appointment. But the other thing too is that your job has a system in place. So they're not really, they're listening, but they're going down the checklist. They've studied the laws. They know what they can say. They know what they can't say. They know about sexism, racism, bias. They have studied the laws in the state that they're operating in. And so they are protecting their investment. This is not about a church going out and hiring a whole human resources department. This is about you possibly paying somebody $2,500 to $5,000 to put a system in place for you. And then you have someone who is able to execute that system. I think part of what breaks the barrier is we don't have boundaries in church. There have to be boundaries. I get it. Sunday morning, it's an emotional roller coaster. It's a spiritual high. There's a lot happening in the atmosphere. Lives are being changed. And Brandon's heard me say this all the time. I didn't get to go to church on Sunday. I worked on Sundays. My job was to not fall out on the floor and run and shout. My job was to watch the altar, pay attention to the list of 20 people that I know are bipolar because they have come in for counseling repeatedly and have acted up before. My job is to make sure
Tina, help the people.
That security knows where they're seated. My job is to see if we have a bad blood situation happening where maybe we have, a wife who's come for counseling. She has a restraining order. And then I see her husband walking in on the other side. My job is to work on Sundays. That's what I'm there for. I'm not there to worship. So my worship opportunities were during the week, which is fine. There are plenty of people who work on Sundays. When I moved here for NASCAR, I worked on Sundays. And so I had to go to church on Wednesday. I just think it's about being responsible. And I'm extremely disappointed in leaders or pastors who are not responsible for the flock. You can't just preach. If that's the case, you should have been doing virtual ministry a long time ago. You are literally responsible for the people who encounter you in this building, and you're responsible for everybody they encounter in the building. And so why we have trust that to just some invisible thing, I don't know. And then I'm also extremely grieved when pastors address issues across the pulpit, and they feel like, oh yeah, I'm gonna deal with all the leaders today from the pulpit. Well, if I'm a leader, I'm offended because I have an issue with you and have handled a few things for you, and you haven't heard me talking to anybody. I've respected you enough to have a one-on-one conversation, so I would expect you to do the same. But we've also experienced a lot of leaders who don't do well with confrontation, and they're not great problem solvers. And so I love what Greg said, is that you're not everything. Nobody can be everything. So you really need to evaluate your strengths and weaknesses and assign people to your weaknesses before you even launch out on your strengths, because the weaknesses are what are going to be attacked first. Your strengths are always going to be praise and worship, but the enemy is going to attack you where you're weak. So if you intentionally have not set up something to cover yourself as a leader, I can very easily look at your church and see why they're damaged just by looking at the pastor. I can see why your members are exposed.
Pastor Greg, come on and help us understand. Reverend Doctor, let me tell y'all, Greg is who I also call, he's my frat brother, so I can make this joke, but I'm dead serious. Greg is Lieutenant Governor of New York. This brother is helping Governor Cuomo get New York together. Okay, let me tell y'all right now, he is helping Governor Cuomo get New York together.
Yeah,
Pastor Greg, how do you model Christian maturity and practice when correction is viewed as church hurt?
So when I came to my church, I didn't have any preachers, and now I have a staff of 4, which is a blessing. They are a blessing to me, and I'm use the term, the expression of trust a lot, because you can't be pastored by someone that you don't trust, even if you go to their church, right? So when you set Tina laid out, you got to set the expectation from the beginning, and I tell my leaders that I don't expect you to be perfect, but I expect you to give your best. And even with your best, you're going to miss the mark at times. And it would be irresponsible of me to allow you to continue on in a way that is not correct. So I am going to correct it. And so setting that stage and that foundation opens up the doors and welcomes correction, because it's coming through and coming from a place of love and their best interest and their development. And with that in mind, it means that it's personal. The correction does its best to actually correct and not tear down the person. So I'm not doing this in front of everybody, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not doing this to make a case point example or put on a show, but the foundation, if you would, is trust. And so I'll end with this. If you don't trust a leader, you cannot hear from a leader. And you know, I'm Baptist, so it is for me.
That said a lot.
We're autonomous, right? I mean, I'm responsible for my church, and nobody gets to come in my church and dictate the rules of the house. So the responsibility is even greater. for me to make sure that things are being done well and done in order. And so with that being said, I don't think pastors have enough awareness that that they don't know everything. I've spoken to pastors that they'll tell you, like, I'm good at this, not good at this, but they won't ever tell the people that. And because they don't share that with anybody, because they don't have trust or they don't trust anybody, as a result, they put too much on themselves, and there's not enough trust with their leaders. And so you're essentially setting up a system to fail. And the last thing I'll say about correction is I tell my people to expect it. And as long as, I look at myself a lot, make sure I didn't do anything, say anything that was disrespectful. And I listen to people, right? To say, hey, I don't think this was incorrectly delivered. So I build all of those safeguards around to ensure that not only the content, but the delivery are in order for correction. And so if at the end of all of that, all of the work that I put forward to, listen to other voices, communicate clearly, directly, lead with trust, if at the end of that you don't want to hear, then I think also we have to get out of the mind that we're saviors. You can't save. You can't save every person, and you'll find yourself in trouble really trying to chase after every member. I know Tina said we lost all our members. Lord have mercy. But you'll really drive yourself crazy trying to chase after every person, because I'm telling you, you can get 99 people that said, we love you, you did this. Listen, even during this pandemic, and I don't want to jump ahead, but you'll get a lot of, yes, great, thank you, we appreciate you, and you will still get the one, but you didn't do this.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, you'll kill yourself trying to save people, right?
You're not going to be able to do it. So I put a lot of, Tina, I agree with you. You got to have more than just church eyes looking at things, and I have a variety of experience and perspectives. But yeah, at the end of all of that, you have to just understand that you still won't catch everybody, and some people will leave anyway after you dot every I and cross every T. So at some point you do still have to look at it from the perspective of, I did all I could, the rest is up to God, and I can't save everybody.
And I think being able to say that you did all you could, that statement only works if you have a system in place, right? If you say I did all I could, but there wasn't a system in place, then you failed these people when they joined.
And can you really save anybody? Can we really save anybody? Like, is that our work, or is that God's work?
Well, when you say
and you said it right, Amber. You said it right, Amber, earlier. When you said it right earlier, when you said, we utilize bad theology and we call it salvation. We call it Jesus. We put the onus. Church folk love to put the onus on somebody else, and I think that's the part of church hurt that we have to address. Even in this conversation, is that the culture is set up to create or foster church hurt. It's just I don't like super saved people. Tina knows this about me. I joke. I'm a church kid. Been in the church my entire. I'm almost 36 years old. I've been preaching since I was 9. I've had maybe 2 jobs outside of church.
He is all Jesus. Trust me.
I am all Jesus, but Tina can also testify that there's a side of me that I only trust with folk I can trust. And it does not include the church all the time. So, but I think super saved people and churchy people, I think they operate with the motive so they can have deniable plausibility, because they just want to be heard. And the church is the only place to where you can cry wolf and get some money or get some attention. Because in the real world, you got to prove how you was hurt. I wish I had a witness. In the real world, you got to show somebody where the crime or the impediment is. Can I use my Methodist language? So, I think this is the only place where we foster an environment of church hurt. Isn't the church? Because as Tina keeps saying, we didn't take the time to put the system in place.
Yeah. So if I come to you with a problem, you can't be putting a system in place addressing my problem. I'm already out the door. Because
absolutely,
and I've experienced that with pastors and doing consultation and like being in their ministry for like 6 months to a year and helping them organize and break down some things, and they have a live situation comes up, and it's like the perfect lesson of what we're talking about. And I'm like, now how are you going to handle this situation when you have nothing in place? So you're about to really have to respond off the top of your head. You're not even equipped. You have no knowledge in this area. Let's say it was molestation or somebody stole something or cursed somebody. You have no background, and you're literally about to sit in this office with a member who has a charge. You ain't taking down no notes. You haven't turned on a voice recorder. You just literally trust.
You ain't got no witnesses.
And you finna get sued, right? Like you'll ultimately get sued. I mean, that has happened in our denomination. I'm not gonna call any names, right? But Google is real. You can Google it.
Yeah.
I mean, we have had, a couple lawsuits in our denomination, particularly in my district where I am now in Georgia in the 6th. So whenever you do have proper channels, right, to follow through, when the allegations are not taken seriously and they are ignored, right, the consequence of that is a lawsuit.
Yeah,
that's right.
So you're not even equipped to deal with the lawsuit. And for me, I think
so. You're saying we're just all ill-equipped.
This is one area. This is one area. I think that because we see that cycle happening over and over and over again, then you're going to get more people trying to come through this loop. They heard such and such got a check. They heard such and such got disposition. And so they keep doing the same thing. And it's almost scary too when you have like a repeat situation over and over again. And then you're looking at the leadership like, so now this thing happened 6 times in the last 6 years. And we still praying? I mean, what is how do you adjust? And sometimes it means that the leadership has to adjust to meet the needs of the people. So let's just take the one example that we had recently. Well, it's been a few years now, of the same-sex bathrooms. I often was asking myself in churches, how are you going to handle that if a man who is now a woman wants to go into a woman's bathroom and you have kids there? Has your staff had a conversation to say, if this should happen, or this is what we should communicate ahead of time? Nope. We do. We just sit back and hope it don't happen and pray it don't happen. And then when it does happen, it's on national news, when it literally has been on national news forever. Like it was inevitable that was going to enter your church. It was inevitable that child molestation was going to be in your church. It was inevitable that rape was going to be in your church. These things are just life things. They're not unique to the church. The same people that are walking around in the world, they stop by your church on Sundays and Wednesdays. But a lot of people are dealing with mental illness. We talk about the police being equipped for mental illness. How many churches are equipped to deal with mental illness? How do you determine if somebody is running around and praising, or if this is a breakout or breakdown? I just think there are a lot of things to consider, and it's not too late. You wake up every day, we learn, every day we're trying to do better, but I think it is being intentional, which allows some ministries to survive some of these storms, and some of these storms shut down churches. And I hate to see the churches end up being shut down because it was all avoidable. There was a solution.
But that's the thing, Tina. That's the thing, and that's the reason why I wanted to have this kind of conversation, is because for too long we have been informed that these certain storms are coming our way. we were told that these situations and instances was headed towards the church. And as pastors, Greg, you can attest to this. When we saw these things making headline news, many of us said exactly what Tina just said. Well, it ain't coming to my church because I'm not dealing with it. Or we said, oh, it'll never happen to us in the black church. But some of these things are coming to light where? In the black church. And we've been ill-equipped for it. And Amber, it's been happening. And so that's the biggest concern. I want to ask question number 3, since we're kind of there. How do you confront church hurt without alienating the person who was or say they were hurt?
I want to hear what Greg has said about that.
Yeah.
Go ahead. She called you out. Go ahead.
So you want to. The key thing is making sure a person is heard. You have to ensure that they are heard, that you hear them, because that's what a lot of times that's what people, even sometimes church or dealing with church hurt is not even about a resolution being in place. And I'm not saying all, but some things are not about a resolution being in place, but about that person being heard. And so they have to be heard. And then if it's going to be escalated, or you see something else needs to take place, then truly you have to set up an environment for communication. I believe, and I didn't always have this, but I'm blessed to have licensed therapists here in my church. But
yes, for licensed therapists. Come on through here. Yes, for licensed therapists. Right there, because some people don't need to hear from you and God. They have real mental ill. They need they need clinical. Okay, calm down.
No, and I've had to kind of work through that. Like, I can do up to here, and then here on, let me refer and recommend, or I'll put in and say, hey, I need you to get involved here. I'd like for you to get involved here to chart a path forward for that person. But like I said, alienating, how your face is, how your response. So let me just wrap it up. Making sure that person is heard is vital. Okay. And truly listening, so that the person is in a position to articulate a resolution. And sometimes that comes from, what would you ask in a very clear question? What would you like to see happen? Or bringing that other person involved in the conversation, including licensed therapists and so on and so forth. But the last thing I'll say is this: making sure that person knows that their issue is of utmost priority to you. Because I think it's easy, because it's not our lived experience, it's easy for us to say, oh, right, I thought you were talking about something serious, but it's just
right.
This. And I think that is definitely the wrong approach to take. But that's my answer there.
Yeah.
That was good. I think sometimes too, one of the things I loved about what you said is making sure that they're heard and asking them, what do you see as a resolution? Right. I think anybody who, as a pastor, you should have leaders, who are able to, emulate you, in your spirit of dealing with people. I know in ministry, I've been very great at listening. I can just go from one problem to the next and just keep going and stay calm and stay engaged with people. And then there are other people that I know I'm not equipped to deal with, right? So you say, okay, this isn't going to be a good exchange because I already know, their motive. And so we need to bring, a professional in to do this. But there are times where I think now correction is very different from when we were all growing up. I know Brandon's age, I'm 47. And when I was growing up in church, anybody could snatch you up, punish you, put you out the choir. Like there was no meetings and nobody to go to. And we had the mean ladies in the church was always in the kitchen cooking, and we just accepted them being mean because they were like the mothers. And now they have, words for that. It's called bullying. I'm like,
well, sometimes it is though.
right,
sometimes it is now.
now I can see it, but growing up back then, you didn't dare call Mama Ann a bully. She was over the kitchen.
Myrtle.
And that's what she does. And you
Bertha the bully.
Right, but when you
Bertha was a bully, honey.
Think about how many people Bertha probably hurt along the way who just didn't get to say anything. Like when we were growing up, people got jumped and beat up. It wasn't bullying. You didn't go to the office. It was like you got beat up, you took your L.
Because if you went to the office and told you got beat up, if you told that you got beat up, the next day you got another whooping coming. I mean,
right. So I think sometimes it is a balance of the new age versus, old school, and kind of knowing, what people can handle and what they're not. I'm very old school. I like clear lines. I like to be literal. I don't like vague, gray. I want to know what the problem is, and I want to fix it right now. Like, I don't want us to talk and then you come back on Tuesday, because I got a whole list of other people that's probably coming on Tuesday. And sometimes I feel like leaders delay, hoping that it's going to go away. And then one day you look up and you have 20 delays that have all pulled in on time looking for an answer. And now it's like, right. Oh my God, what happened? You know what happened? You ignored this one. You sent this one over here. You adjusted that one. You hoped that one was quiet. You let Mary talk to her and Kevin talk to her, and nothing was resolved. So even as you pass through, and this is why processes are so important, because the process delivers paperwork. It delivers a track record of how did we handle things. So as Amber said, if you end up in a lawsuit, you have a paper trail. You have a documentation of every step that you have taken, with this person, because the goal is always to resolve. We are a place that wants to be open and offer healing and hope. But I love what Greg said about hope. It's like we want them to feel like just hold on a little while longer. Well, there's some stuff you don't have to hold on to. If the ushers are mean, they mean today, they're going to be mean next Sunday and next Thursday. Let's deal with them today. That we don't have to hold on for that. I mean, if the roof is leaking, we might have to hold on. That might be a budgetary item we have to work on. But people being kind, people being loving, people being caring, considerate, those things we don't have to wait on. Those are things that can be addressed right away.
And Tina, it's interesting that you say that, because the church is in the business of people. We're in the business of helping people transform their lives and their situations, yet we consistently foster an environment where we do not address the issues that present themselves initially, or even the ones that come back to bite us in the butt. Amber, you was going to say something earlier, so now that we heard from Pastor Greg, I want to get your response.
Hold on 1 second, Amber, not to jump over you, but I just want to say one thing to what Brandon said. That was my biggest shock. It's always my biggest shock in crisis, that whenever we enter a crisis, the church closes. The Red Cross doesn't shut down. The hospitals don't shut down. The police department doesn't shut down. But COVID-19 came and every church closed. And it was like, well, I thought this was the house of hope. I thought this was where we have faith and we believe. Why are we not set up to serve during COVID? Because the Red Cross is working, and they're not working on some spiritual front, which we have a different advantage than they do. But it made you think, okay, if we're going into virtual learning, why aren't you able to convert your church into a place for virtual tutoring? If you're feeding, why aren't you able? These businesses have food that they will give away week after week after week. All they want you to do is open the door and get some volunteers to serve. So there's some times where I feel like we disappear, where we could be more present. But there are organizations like the Red Cross who never close. Hurricane Katrina happens, and what do? They jump on planes, buses, and show up. But not us. We close.
Yeah, and that takes number one, imagination and vision. And it also takes being clear on what the church is called to do. You're not going to see yourself as an extension of the Red Cross or other disaster relief orgs, right? If you don't see yourself as being an institution that helps to meet not just the spiritual needs, but also the tangible needs, right? So unless you see yourself as that, you're not going to function as that. Unless you have imagination, right, to prepare, right?
That's the role of the church. That's just the role of the church, right? To meet the needs of the people and save.
No, yeah, for sure. But many, however, do not see themselves as that. Right. There are many churches, who say that work is for the Red Cross, right? That work is for, those who are elected, to a public office, right? They don't see themselves as public servants. Oftentimes, when we're in the minority, because we read the text in that way, right? The biblical text in that way. But there are many churches that see themselves as solely concerned with a person's soul, right? So yeah, I think that to kind of address what you were saying, Tina, we need imagination, right? We need to reimagine the role of a church and how we can serve, right? But I just wanted to I didn't have much to add though to what to Greg was saying about making sure people are heard, because most times that's all it is. People have been ignored, right? And their issues have gone unaddressed and unresolved for so long. And so they are looking to us, right, to hear them. And a lot of times, and we know this, historically, the Black church in our communities has been the place where we have had a voice and a presence and a role, right? And so why not then in this space, now some stuff is some BS, right? But even the BS, you still need to hear people out, right? You can mediate and resolve the BS, right? But you still have to hear people out, because again, this is the only place where people have a voice and feel as though they are valued in somebody, right? The church gives, a sense of somebodyness to people, especially Black people, right? So yeah, listening requires talking less, right? And really trying to figure out, okay, what is the real issue at work here, right? It's not that they put you out the choir, because you sound bad, right? What's the real issue?
Right.
But stay right there, Amber. Stay right there. What if they did ask you to lead the choir because you sound bad? You can't.
So sit down. Go do something else.
Yeah, I mean that's like me hiring a piano teacher. Yeah, that's like me hiring. We put up a sign and said we're hiring a new musician, and you got Sister Odell's grandson who been banging on the keys at her house for 20 years, but ain't never made a tune. And she said, "My grandbaby can do that, Reverend."
And no, your grandchild can't. Your grandchild can't. Yeah, I mean, we need to do a better job of helping people. My husband always says this, like it is his biggest pet peeve when folks are in the choir who can't sing. Right? He hates that. Like he hates it with a passion. Seriously. I mean, I'm like, dude, like calm down, chill out. He's like, no, I don't understand this. Like, get out the choir if you can't sing. But he's right though. I mean, you could want to, exalt the Lord, with your voice and make a joyful noise, right? But at the same time, that may not be your gift, right? Find your gift. And I agree, we should not, it depends on how it's said, right? If I come at you in love and with care, right? If I'm exercising care and I deliver it a certain way, you may receive it, right? But at the end of the day, you're right, Brandon, discern your calling, right? And discern your gifts and serve in that way. But I mean, yeah, I'm telling y'all, a church I served at, I remember one time, y'all, one of the members' daughters, like, we thought she was going to sing the house down, right? Because she had been saying that her daughter can sing. Yeah, my daughter can sing. Like, I can't wait till she come back to the church and you a young lady and she might take to you because you young and she young. And she was very nice. She was a real nice girl, right? But that girl got up and sang. And I was just like, sing, baby, sing, daughter. And he just He turns away and I'm just like, dude, calm. Chill out, bro. I couldn't look at him. I could not look at him because I'm trying to be diplomatic about it, right? You know. But I told her, I said, you're right with kids. Like you should help, with the children, like with the CYF, So she did CYF stuff. And stop saying.
And that's the thing. And that's the thing. So, Greg, you can attest to this. I had a situation where, and I think I shared this in our group, Greg. I had a situation where this is my first senior pastorate, and it's Mother's Day, and so one of the members is like, "Now, Reverend, this is one of these situations where you're going to have to choose your words nicely." Now, I have had the mothers of the church, and I love them. I listen to them. I bring them in as security for me because I'm a single pastor. I've had the mother of the church say to me,
"A single pastor or a senior pastor?" What you just say? A single or a senior?
I'm single. I ain't got a wife.
Make sure.
And so I've had the mothers, I brought them in for help. And so I had one mother, she's told me on, several occasions, "Hey, Reverend, you're very educated and you're very smart and you're a man. And sometimes you don't say it right. So let me help you." And so I appreciate her telling me this. And this was one of the situations where she said, "Now, Reverend, you're going to have to say this the right way." This lady wanted to sing on Mother's Day.
That was some good correction.
That was good correction. Yeah, that's
good correction. And so, she said, "Reverend," she did. And she cared about my ministry too, because she said, "Now, Reverend, this lady is going to want to sing today because it's Mother's Day. And I'm going to need you to use your words the right way." And so this lady gets up. And I mean, Amber, listen, I'm about to kill your side. I'm about to kill your whole side. This lady gets up. Now, she has no teeth here. There's none. It's a perfect square. It's a perfect square. It's a perfect square. And she gets up and she's like, "Pastor, I want to sing my song on Mother's Day for my dear mama." And she goes to singing. And I mean, I'm thinking she's gonna lay us out.
Yeah.
And this sister gets to sing it, and if I could hear my mother, I'm full. I'm behind the pulpit on the floor, weak. And I can hear that mother behind me like, "Reverend, get up. You're a grown man. Get up." And I can't because I'm weak.
On your feet.
And it's one of those instances where I had to summit together and say, "Thank you, sister, for blessing us today. You blessed our souls today. I thank you so much." And that's all she wanted to hear. That's all she wanted to feel, was that I took what she felt as a tribute to her mother, who was a good mother, apparently. And she just wanted to hear her pastor say, "Thank you. You did a good job. And I'm glad you honored your mother." And that leads me to my fourth question, which I'm not going to ask. I'm going to go direct to our last question. We've been here for a good minute. I think the lack of ministry selection, and Amber, we talked about this for a minute, the lack of ministry selection, presence, and spiritual guidance, it does foster an environment of church hurt, because some people are not really looking to be the spotlight member. There are some people who are not looking to be the deacon on the deacon board who helps pastor get everything done. There are some people who just don't have the cultural, emotional, and intellectual ability to see that their behavior and their consistent desire to be out front is making them look like, "Oh, it just got to be me or nobody else can do it." There are really people who, from the heart, "I just want to help Pastor Greg be successful at this church. I want to help Tina do whatever Tina does. And I'm not always showing up because I got to be that pet person. I got to be this individual. It's because I love Tina so much. I just want to be a part of everything Tina got going on, because to that member, to that person, you're the best thing since sliced bread." But then there's also people who are within the church and within church organizations, I feel, who create hurt because, "Oh, pastor didn't select me and he knows I have a PhD. Pastor didn't choose me because he knows I work with money on my regular everyday job. So why didn't he put me on the finance committee?" And so I think we've talked about that already that, you know, persons who don't get selected for ministry, persons who don't have the privilege of being, you know, pastors, you know, number one mentee, they create this in their mind. They create hurt. Am I wrong?
I think one of the things that's interesting, I know at our church at Elevation, you're only allowed to serve in any ministry a maximum of 5 years.
Okay.
And so you're not allowed to sit someplace and become complacent. You're always challenged to move on to the next thing. Now there's some ministry, like the heads have some consistency, right? Because there are legal issues. So like the children's church, you know, I think most of them have been there from the beginning. But I remember when I joined, of course, I wanted to do media, and I did. And right around you knew it ahead of time, you couldn't stay forever. Right around 3 years, they have a meeting with you to say, hey, you know, you've been doing such a great job. We just want to know what other areas in the church are you interested in serving? Well, by then I had, you know, gotten a glimpse of different things. And so I moved on to marketing and social media. So I came from behind the cameras, and then from marketing social media, I started doing event planning. And so I felt like that was my first time ever experiencing that. But the thing that I loved about it was that when you came in, you were told this. So there was no confusion that you was going to be running anything for 20 years. It's 5 years, and we have a conversation with you at 3 so that we can create a smooth transition. So I think in response to what you were saying, I think sometimes it's hearing people and it's listening, but it's also challenging them. You know, like you might be good with kids, but since you've been here for this long, I now see you developing a gift in something else. Why don't we go try this? So I like the challenging part of ministry that encourages people to grow and try different things.
Yeah, and like you say, not just sit up in positions and not do anything, right? I mean, that happens so often. People have been the chair of a steward board forever, chair of trustee board forever, and they use their tenure, right, the time that they've spent in that position, to number one, to not do anything, and to number two, bully people, right? And to throw their weight around, and nothing is done. Like nothing ever ends up getting done that way. So that is a really good. I mean, in the real world, people have term limits, right? And I always say that things that we do in the real world, for some reason, they go out the window when we get to church. Like the logic.
Nobody wants to be held responsible.
Yeah, like the logic that applies to the real world. I don't know why, like once we pull up to our church grounds, that logic and rationale, like, you know, is non-existent anymore. That's a very good idea that I think that, you know, some folks need to try to model in their churches. But I mean,
and top leadership should probably, you know, be consistent, like the person who's handling your money. And, you know, I mean, there are certain roles that should stay the same, but I think you do a disservice to your members not to challenge them to grow in more than one area of their life.
And folks get mad when you sit them down now. People will fight you and try to put you out the church, right? Whether you're Methodist or Baptist or non-denominational, right? People will try to put you out the church if you sit them down. I mean, it is.
I always say, Amber, that's why you need to have a business plan from day one. So when I joined Elevation, I didn't have to be confused. Like, well, why I can't just stay over here? Because they told me in training that we have a 5-year limit. Now you can switch earlier, but 5 is the limit. And at 3, we're going to sit down and do an evaluation, and you will move in 5 years. It wasn't suggested to me. It wasn't optional. And you signed something saying that you agreed to the process. That takes all the guessing work out of the middle.
And I mean, even in Methodist bodies, though, like the pastor can appoint whomever, right, on boards and auxiliaries, and you know, certain things are voted on. Others, the pastor, you know, has all the authority to appoint that person. But even when a pastor, you know, attempts to remove someone, oh, child, it's hell to pay.
Absolutely. Tina, absolutely. I mean, you know, there's been instances where And this is a perfect example of what is and what is not church hurt. I'm a person of language, so I'm the reverse kind of an individual in every aspect or facet of life. Words are important to me. Language is important to me.
Yes.
There's a reason why. For example, Greg is Baptist, so Greg in the Methodist Church, we use the word term limit a lot and appointed. There's a reason why we say Pastor Greg was appointed 40 times to St. John AME Church versus, oh, Pastor Greg been here 40 years. No, he's been appointed 40 times because we want you to understand that at any given time, you can receive a 90-day notice and that appointment can be subject to change. And so
y'all get notices in the AME church. Y'all get notices.
We
don't get no notice. They just they tell you before the conference, a week before.
Yeah, we supposed to.
If you have that much courtesy, right, from the bishop, they don't tell you nothing, and that's terrible. I hate that.
Have brought that back. Most bishops have brought that back. The 90-day notice. It's law that you're supposed to. Most bishops have brought that back. But even within the local church. In the local church, it's important. I remember my pastor, Dr. Allen, said that he had a cantankerous steward, Greg, and he did. It was his first church. He didn't want to start a problem, but this dude was a problem. And so what pastor did was he took his executive privilege, and so he went and called the newspaper. He went and got the photographers. He put this big service on. Nobody knew that he was going to make this man a steward emeritus for life. And so during the middle of the worship service, he just, all these people are here from the newspaper, from the town paper. He calls his brother up, brings out balloons, big old plaque. And he says, for your many years of service, this church want to thank you for the sacrifices you have made for us. The money out of your personal pocket you have given to make this church what it is today. And we are hereby making you steward emeritus for life. And that ceased all of his troubles. But we don't take the time to look at how we can help the church because, as Tina has said several times, we have failed to put process. And in some cases, we don't use the process that is in place. I want to get Greg's comment about this. Greg, does the lack of ministry selection, the lack of ministry presence, or the lack of spiritual guidance create an environment of church hurt?
Yeah. I talk to right now. So I talk to my leaders a lot, right? So you all may be aware, Brandon, I know you are. I think over the past month, if somebody wanted to make some money, they could use the tagline "Preachers Gone Wild."
Man,
there have been preachers that have been just decided to flip out and go on social media regarding their love life.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not going to give specific names, but there was one person who really just lost it because she felt like, part of the reason that she felt like that she was going to churches, preaching at other churches, and raising good offerings at those churches, and putting people on those flyers. That
they didn't put her on the flyer, and she was.
They didn't put her on the flyer. They did not put her on the flyer.
The whole time hoping, like, okay, when we get to the end of this, she's gonna tell us like what happened, and they
didn't put her on the flyer. And so believe it or not, like as painful as that was to watch, I called an emergency meeting. I called all my preachers at the church. And I just basically said, listen, I think you can often tell that some of these people don't have a pastor or someone that they can trust. Mm-hmm. Because if nobody can talk you down off the ledge.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There has not been a pattern or an established relationship of trust prior to. And I think in many of these people's cases, we were seeing people that were calling them or texting them, and they were calling their names out. I don't want to hear from you. Don't talk to me. Stop calling me. And I was just looking like, wow, nobody could talk them down. And I encourage people. Listen, I have a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
Every
That's right.
pastor
Fuck, sir.
needs
Yep.
a pastor. And
Sometimes 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
listen, somebody, you got to eat from somebody's table.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
And,
Yes, sir.
And it's so important because when you have that in place, you know how to communicate healing and structure to others. So long story short, I got them all together, and I basically said to them, I said, listen, you may fall at times. You may have challenges. You may have issues. You may have problems in your family, blah, blah, blah. But remember that we are a safe space. We have trust. Let us deal with it. Let us communicate about it. Social media is not the place to do it, because all of that is it. We've been saying it all throughout this conversation. People don't feel like they are heard, and so it's a matter where, you know, a person kind of takes their destiny into their own hands. Says, I've been giving hints, I've been nudging, I've been trying to say, but nobody's hearing me. Bet everybody gonna hear me now.
Yeah.
And you just don't want to create that environment. Even the brand, when you don't want that silence. You want to create an intentional environment. So this is so important. This is me. This isn't everybody. I talk to all of my leaders directly, and this is me. This is not everybody. My leaders don't have to go through somebody to get to me.
Mm-hmm.
This is me, not everybody. And the last thing I'll say is that as busy as I am, the challenge is making sure that they're heard. If they are heard by me, they don't have to take their situation into their own hands via social media or anywhere. And so that's my push. We have to be very intentional in our leading and intentional in our listening and intentional to what Tina shared. Even if you don't have the structure set up yet, you can be on the way there, on the way to structure, on the way. Churches bring in consultants. We have to start normalizing that.
Yeah.
We have to start normalizing other voices. Listen, I know you love how things are going, but how much better can it be? And I'll say this lastly. A friend of mine, you were saying, Tina, earlier, and Amber, I know you mentioned this too. A friend of mine said this to me years ago. I'll never forget, at the Samuel Louis Proctor conference. He said, we really have to start doing church by imagination, because unfortunately, until this point, we've been doing it by memory. And it's evident and clear that the reason why we haven't done all of these, I know it's easy to say, I mean, we should have been ready for COVID. No, if the church if what the church has been doing has been working for them, then the discomfort of something being dysfunctional has not forced them to change. So now it's dysfunctional or uncomfortable to bring somebody into church, especially here in New York. So now you have to start thinking of other ways to do things. And I'm just saying that we need to take this as a lesson moving forward. As one person said, and I shared, even I remixed it. I said to our people, instead of having a theology of Exodus, we need to have a theology of exile and really learn what are the lessons that God is trying to teach us during this time. And even, Tina, even to this point, before you get a lawsuit, before you get an issue, let's make sure that we're in the process of improving. You know what? You may not get to the point where everything is covered, but you should be able to say, you know, like Amber, I know some of the challenges going down there in Georgia, but you should be able to say we are better today than we are yesterday, not by accident, but by intention. So that's intentionality, I think, is key for this conversation.
I want to just say the one thing, I know the young lady that you're referring to with the breakdown, and we've seen a few of them during COVID.
Yeah.
I think one thing that we're often guilty of is celebrating and using the gift to our advantage without taking care of the person. So we have seen, you know, so many times where this person, we bring them because this is going to bring us a packed house. This person raises good money. People always join. Like there's always a reason, you know, that people come in. So we're so in love with the gift that we don't pay attention to the person. So then you look up,
especially with musicians.
Yes, and so you look up and you have Leandria Johnson, you know, who comes out and says I'm an alcoholic, but was surrounded by people who enabled her drinking, and churches kept having her, even though they would see her showing up and stumbling, you know, on Sunday, just because they still wanted to have that moment. Or we have the issue now of where does the church stand on homosexuality, and 90% of the ministers of music are gay. So it's like, now you like them or you don't like them, you want to have them, you don't want to have them, but because you just kind of was hoping it wouldn't come up.
We exploit people's gifts, like we exploit people. It's almost like prostitution.
And so it's
for sure.
It's not even about like, oh, if this person's a homosexual, they can't serve. It's just a matter of setting a standard and a set of beliefs that you have, because everybody in your church doing something wrong that goes against the Bible, right? It just may be that homosexuality is a little more visible than others. But you have drug addicts who are leaders. You have alcoholics who are leaders. You have leaders who are abusing their wives and abusing their husbands. We just don't get to see it. But on Sunday morning, it's more visible. So I think from an internal,
it ain't nobody's business. Like if I'm gay, it's no one's business but mine.
Amber,
like,
say it again. Amber, say it again.
It's no one's business. Like we have such a fascination with people's bedrooms, right?
That becomes so weird. It's like, why is this such a big conversation? When one, you already knew they was at your church. They've been here for 20 years. So why now?
Some people, Lord Jesus, some people make it a conversation for the sake of attention. Now I'm
to distract from
some people. I'm saying some people who are in that lifestyle. Not everybody, of course.
Yeah.
But some people use, and everybody has something that they use for attention. Some people have used that for attention. And I had somebody come to me and like in the very earnest, like serious, like, Pastor, I need to talk to you, and like serious. We sat down face to face, eye to eye, pre-COVID, and looked at me and said, and told me that, revealed that to me about himself. And I said, I'm aware already. Like it wasn't like I already knew it. And I think there was like such a shock that I knew, but I still didn't treat him like the other, if you would.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm 100%. I'm 100% in agreement with you, Amber.
And this goes back to what I was talking about with processes. I'm often amazed at pastors who have an opinion and no process. So now this person is coming to you know you don't have no process in place. You might as well be quiet, because it's really not, you're not equipped to handle what's in front of you, right? So this is where, Greg, as you say, you have to go out and get some help. But I think that we blow up things because we don't have a standard, because we haven't set the tone for what we're doing. And we also don't stay current. So we all know the church is a good 10, 15 years behind socially. We're always kind of late getting to the table, getting to the conversation. So it really is still shocking that we're still caught off guard because we're already 10 years late. So when the issue of homosexuality comes up, or, you know, when you're dealing with senior leadership that's been around a long time, but they're no longer effective, it can be very disappointing when the pastor doesn't address it because there's no system in place. So you can't get up and preach these crafty sermons on Sunday trying to emotionally get everybody like on your side or believing what you say when you have like a real issue facing you. And I think a lot of times that's what scatters the sheep, because you're scattered, they become scattered. Whereas back in the day, whatever the pastor said was what we did. I mean, it was clear. Pastor said we're doing this. This is what we're doing. Nobody really fought the system. Well, now, you know, the members are more control, you know, than the leaders, which is good and bad, you know, at times.
Let me jump out here and say this real quickly. That my aunt Elaine is watching on Facebook Live right now, and she is loving you all. And Amber, she is loving you. My auntie is loving your comments. She just said we have.
Thank you, girl.
My aunt Lane just said we have no heaven nor hell to put people in.
That's correct.
The church be the gateway. Let the church be the gateway for unconditional love. It increases the chances that we will have handled their business between them and God to one day make it to heaven. And I think that is the thing that I advocate. Amber, you said it just a second ago. I said this from the pulpit, and I said it the way I'm about to say it now. I don't care who's hunching who. It ain't none of nobody's business.
Unless you out here molesting and raping folk.
Right.
And here's the
only way it's someone's business. Other than that, if it's two consenting adults, ain't got nothing to do with me. Okay.
And here's the thing: when we bring private and lifestyle characteristics to the forefront, we foster the environment for you to get yourself hurt. Not church hurt. You foster the environment to get yourself hurt. There's something I love about being a Methodist. At every annual conference, the bishop, towards the closing of the conference, does the disciplinary questions. And one of the things the bishop does is he passes character. And he asks all of the pastors and ministers to stand to pass the character of the preachers for another conference year. And I have always taken that as serious.
I'll be afraid sometimes because I've had to cuss some folk out. So I'm like, oh God.
Listen.
I had to go pass. I had to cuss out.
And when the bishop asked the question, is there anything that we need to know of concerning the character of these ministers?
That's
and then
correct.
it says, hearing none. That's right, Tina. And then they say, hearing none, we characters not passed. But that's the thing that I've been concerned about for a very long time is that, why is it that you have to put your character and lifestyle practices on the forefront? Because you foster the environment of getting yourself hurt. Why is it that you have to let everybody know you're gay? Why is it that you have to let everybody know you're a womanizer? And you might say, well, how do they do that? Because you in every woman's face. And so, when you put your character on the line, when you put your mean, ugly, ungodly character on the line, you foster the environment to get yourself hurt. You've been talking weird for a long time. That's why folk don't want you on their committee. You one of them mean members that nobody wants to sit next to in the choir stand because you just don't know how to say stuff the right way. Nobody wants to work with you in the kitchen because it got to be your way or the highway. And so when you put your characteristics on display, you foster the environment to get yourself hurt, and you do not have the right to cry wolf. And so I think Greg said it best. We have to be concerned about people's characters and people's practices, because a lot of the stuff that we call church hurt is not church hurt. Is you did it to yourself.
But just while we're just saying this, I think one of the best surprises of 2020 has been I had a transgender person join the ministry, and I didn't even know she was transgender. And
Most times we won't know.
Because they look better than us on a lot of days.
And I just, for me, I was like, wow, just the fact that a person could feel welcomed.
Yes.
And the fact that a person can have Christ ministered, Amber, without that fear of judgment. I don't know. It really blessed me in a way that I had not felt before. And you all said it best.
That's huge.
This is all about, there's some real stuff on the line here. And I'll say a lot of times I let people talk, and sometimes they'll tell me, like, Pastor, I didn't want you to do anything. I just, I wanted to just share it with you. Literally, that's oftentimes what people want.
Yeah.
And so, overcoming church hurt means that we have to be good listeners, and we can't be afraid to address controversy or have confrontations. Listen, we have zero credibility as a church if someone comes to me and tells me that a leader is being, let's say, abusive or sexually abusive or whatever the issue, and I do nothing, I don't say anything. So that, and I'll say this in closing, I've seen churches that were really, booming churches, and because of credibility issues with the leader, I had to pause for a second. A young lady I know personally who was sexually assaulted by somebody, and the pastor did nothing. This guy was a musician. Pastor didn't say anything, just wanted to keep the musician. This guy got arrested and then addressed it months later.
Mm-hmm.
Not only did she leave the church, but so many others left the church as well. And so being in leadership and dealing with church hurt requires us to be active listeners and requires us to be unafraid of facing confrontational issues.
Yeah.
I think that, Greg, you brought up a good point. It's the same as how we protect our homes, right? If I come home and my door is propped open, I'm not going to be like, oh, I wonder why that's open, and just keep on moving. Then the next day I come home, the window cracked. And I'm like,
Right.
oh, how did that window get cracked? All right, I'll call somebody next week to come fix that. Next day I come home, somebody had broken and stole all the TVs. Like, if I had just dealt with the door being cracked, maybe I wouldn't have had my windows and my TV stolen. So I think that it's what you said, when something happens, though you may feel it's confined and, maybe private, because sometimes those issues are, private, it really just becomes a spider or like an octopus with tentacles. And by the time you get to it, it's not just that anymore. It's 20 other things attached to it. And now it's a mess. Whereas had we just dealt with that one little crack in the door, we would have been able to save a lot of people a lot sooner.
That's right.
Listen, I want to thank all of you for your time and your energy in this conversation. Pastor Amber, Pastor Greg, Tina, this has been a blessing. We certainly went over a lot of time that I thought we was going to be here. This has been a good conversation, and this has
Owe me a
been
chicken
very
wing.
needed. Listen, I got you. I got your whole bucket. I got your whole bucket. You know, and enjoy it on me because I can't eat fried chicken no more. But I want to thank you all for helping to identify what church hurt is, and to also identify the other areas of concern within the life of the church. Because these are the things that, you know, we need to adjust as we move forward. 2021 will be here in a couple of days, and if you are still doing ministry the same way you was doing it in 2019, with all of the conversation that has taken place in 2020 surrounding church, something is seriously wrong. The church has been on the forefront for the first time in a long time, just about every single day of 2020, because people were concerned how the church was going to survive and how the church was going to do ministry without the blessing of persons being physically there. And so I just want to thank you all for being here today. And I ask everyone this question, and I want to ask you all the same question using the context of our conversation, if you will. And this is kind of like a signing off. Using the context of our conversation, define unholy silence. Amber, if you'll go first, please.
Seeing injustice and abuse and doing nothing. Seeing what is clearly wrong and disrespectful to someone's being and personhood and not doing anything about it.
Tina?
Yeah, I would agree with Amber. My definition would be the same. I'm just going to take this 1 second to say something off topic. I always say that the church is alive and well. You know, God didn't give us that much power to destroy his whole church. So though we may have some things that we're working on, the church is alive and doing very well.
Pastor Greg Merriweather?
I have to use my New Yorker language. And, you know, we have a saying here, you see something, say something.
Love it.
Listen, I want to thank you all for tuning in today. This has been a wonderful conversation, a very needed conversation to have and to discuss in the life of the church. I want to share with you our thought for the month. Success isn't measured by the fame we acquire from people's praise or the height of societal status, but real success is trusting that the pathway God has set us upon is secure, that the visions God has given us aren't premature thoughts of grandeur, but simply a vision of things to come. My name has been Brandon. My name is Brandon A.J. Davis. This has been Conversations with Faith Leaders, and I invite you to join us next week.